So, guys, we're a couple minutes after here. I know that folks are still joining and getting connected, but in the interest of time and getting the most out of this conversation, I want to go ahead and kick things off. So, I want to introduce my newest colleague, Joni, who is joining us to help grow this UPLEVEL program, and is going to be an incredible resource in helping this event and all the things that it represents continue to evolve into the future, 2022 and beyond. So Joni, thanks for joining us, and can you help us get this kicked off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Marshall. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this exciting webinar hosted by Nexus. It's titled Program Insight Measurement Reporting, How World-Class Programs Are Gathering, Preparing, and Reporting Data and Insights. Today features an amazing group of panelists from Autodesk, F5, and Verizon. We also have a wide range of representation from across the globe in the audience today. We will have several polls throughout this webinar, so keep your eyes open for those, and we invite you to participate and look forward to your feedback. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor back to Marshall, my colleague, and who will be your host for today. Enjoy the program.
Thank you so much, Joni. We're glad to have you on board and excited for what comes next. So, welcome to Q4, everyone. It's crunch time. We're all trying to close these end of year deals. So I really appreciate everybody making the time to be here with us today. It's really a testament to the spirit of this industry and the commitment to evolution and growth that I see and recognize across everybody that I meet in this space. So I really appreciate the time, especially from our panelists that are joining us today. So today I have friends, new and old, from across the industry, some folks that I really admire from across the space. We're going to be talking about a topic that is one of the most frequent questions that I get across the space. So I'm really excited to dig into this. And for those of you that haven't joined UPLEVEL events, this is the virtual forum that we're hosting today is a quarterly event where we bring together thought leaders from across the space to dig into a particular segment of challenges, of opportunities that we're facing across the industry, and dig into some insights that these leaders bring to the table. So today we have a great panel. We're going to be digging into insights, measurement, reporting, how we know that we're doing our job, and how we make sure that those in the organization actually know it. I would be doing a disservice to attempt to try to introduce our panelists and the programs that they represent. So I want to turn the floor over to our panelists and let them tell us a little bit about ourselves. But before we do, Anita, one of our panelists today, actually posed this question in a forum, an industry forum, that got really minimal response. And I think one of the great advantages of this virtual forum that we put on is we get everybody in one place, and we have your captive attention to give us some responses to this. So if nothing else, I'll be looking forward to sharing this data with Anita so she can get a real answer to her question for the industry. But also with the polls today and all of the discussion points that we're going to be reviewing throughout this conversation are going to be consolidated and condensed into some wrap-up reports and highlights that we'll be sharing with all of you joining live and also registered for the event at all. We'll get you the recording and all these kind of highlights that I'm speaking to. So I want to get right into it. And Anita, how you doing? Joining us from Seattle, right?
I am joining from Seattle, and thank you for launching that poll. I'm excited to hear the results. So that's great.
Sure thing. Well, thanks for being with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history within this industry, and the program with F5 that you represent?
Yes, of course. So F5 has a small program, right? There's 6 of us on the team, and we host about 250 to 300 customers a year We have a presence in London, a center in San Jose, in the heart of the Silicon Valley, and our award-winning world-class center in Seattle. I had to throw that in. So we changed our name a couple of years ago from Executive Briefing Center to Customer Engagement Center. As we're doing, more than just briefings these days, and reaching kind of wider into accounts. And our focus really is on deal acceleration. As for me, before I started managing the program, I spent time at AWS and Microsoft doing, product and partner marketing. Was actually a speaker for the Microsoft EBC for a bit, which was fun. And then I joined the F5 program because really this allowed me to kind of get closer to the customer and create these great personal experiences.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for being here. So customer engagement program, that's an interesting shift that we're seeing. I think we might have another one of those represented. I think it's a great term for the industry. I'm curious to see how that takes hold because it's a great descriptor. Awesome. So moving right along here, let's see, Joe, I think we've got you up next as far as showing a little bit about your program. Thanks so much for being here today. So we got some big news that Joe actually just became a grandfather today. So we're even more excited to have him join us with the limited attention span. So Joe, thanks for joining us from Boston. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to with Autodesk.
Well, thank you, Marshall. You know that I'm creative in different ways to get head count. So, we'll grow the family as we can. So
that's right.
But thank you. I've been with Autodesk now for 2 years. Prior to that with IBM. In IBM, I had consulting roles as well as we'll call it the briefing space, but to Anita's point, some of the programs I was in was executive briefing program, the innovation center program, but they did briefings. Then the Watson Experience Center program, but it was a briefing program. And now at Autodesk, well, we do call it the executive briefing program. We're very much focused on customer and executive engagement, beyond the program itself. What keeps me, coming back to the briefing world is I had shared with you once before when I was in the military in a search and rescue squadron. We focused on, these things we do so others may live. And really, I like that because you're in service of something greater than yourself. And I see the briefing program in service of something greater than itself, in service to helping strengthen relationships, progress opportunities, discover new opportunities, and bring those insights back into the business. So it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. Autodesk, we now have 3 centers, physical locations. Our headquarters center, which is in San Francisco, and we're about to do a grand opening in January because we totally remodeled the gallery as well as the brand new briefing center there, Boston, and then in Birmingham in the UK. Like everyone else, we came to a grinding halt last year, launched virtual briefings, and this year we're about 102 briefings virtually completed, touching about $300 million in opportunities. So thank you.
Awesome, Joe. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really exciting news personally, and we can't wait to see what's happening with the Autodesk program going forward. I know you're working on a lot of big stuff, so can't wait to get into it. So let's talk a little bit about. Let's move things to Stacy. Stacy, I know you're joining us from the road. So thanks for joining us from Las Vegas. How are things going with the AWS conference?
They're going well. It's very crowded, much more so than I had anticipated.
It's exciting stuff for sure. So we really appreciate you being here, Stacy. You're a big name in the industry. A lot of folks in the audience calling you out already. So tell us a little bit about yourself. For those that don't know, tell us about what you're up to with Verizon.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have to say, it's a great community. So that's why the call outs, I'm sure. It's great to be able to be here, share about our programs and share together. So
absolutely.
ABPM fosters that very, very well. So happy to be here. Verizon is a global program. We've got 5 centers globally. I have to say we've grown tremendously in the last 5 to 7 years. We do somewhere in the realm of 700 to 800 briefings a year. We support all the business units of Verizon, the enterprise space, public sector, and now mid-markets, which is new to us. Our briefing team is about 15 people, but my team is the broader customer programs and events team. So we're able to, really cross-reference and support from some of those other teams as well, which I think, is helpful in the overall planning for all of the events that we do. I've been with Verizon a very long time and have had a variety of responsibilities. I did take on the EBC responsibility in 2006, and then, was fortunate enough to build out this broader marketing and events and customer programs team that includes not only the EBC program, but trade shows and webinars and customer programs, advisory programs. So it's really nice to have all of those teams under one umbrella so that we really can support cross-functionally. It's a great program at Verizon. We're really, really happy of where we are. And I'll throw out that we are also award-winning in our centers as well as our programs. So super proud of that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Stacy. I'm doing a lot, joining us from the road, so we really appreciate it. So before I move on to our discussion here, I just want to quickly throw up those poll results. So it looks like still a common theme. We've been hearing about it for years. There's a challenge as far as getting responses to surveys. We used to hear about, really needing to get it in front of people with pen and paper in the room. That's not as accessible of an option these days for obvious reasons. But we're on the flip side, we're seeing a lot of opportunity here as the paradigm shifts, as we look to virtual and hybrid engagements as tools in our tool belt to engage with customers. It presents new ways to interact with these customers, and we're actually seeing in some cases, an increase in participation with these interactive elements, feedback, surveys, questionnaires, et cetera. So new tools like customer portals and interactive web elements to the virtual, it's like a companion to the experience, seem to be creating new opportunities to help kind of drive that participation and get more meaningful insight. But I'm looking forward to hearing more about what our panelist programs are doing in that regard. But let's get right into it, y'all. My first topic, and this is a big one for the entire industry, but I want to talk a little bit about measuring success. I want to talk about, for lack of a better term, KPIs and how what you really concentrate on as far as knowing that you're doing your job and ensuring that the rest of the business knows that your operation is creating the influence and the impact that we all know is there. Anita, I want to start with you. One of the great things about our audience, our panel today, is that we've got a diverse group of businesses in terms of industries represented and size of the program. And I think that you have a well-established program, but maybe on the smaller end, at least as far as our conversation today. Tell me a little bit about how you look at measuring success and KPIs and the things that you think are really critical for your program and your story that you're telling.
Yeah, thanks, Marshall. So we collect a lot of data and measure everything, right? Like everybody here on this panel, right? We have that. But in the end, we really determined that our KPIs should really reflect two things, right? The health of our program and the impact it's making, right? So we track net new users and repeat users. That really tells us, whether the program is being leveraged across the board, and if we're growing, because we think the more diverse the users, the more goodness it leads to, such as theater penetration, segment penetration, increase in utilization, right? And then revenue lift and win rate shows our impact. And then, we'll add some color around that and talk about, what do those KPIs mean, right? How does it compare year over year or quarter over quarter?
Right.
Or how does it compare to accounts that don't use our program? And that's a huge one for us, right? And then what have we learned? And then what action do we need to take, if any? So those are our core KPIs.
Fantastic. I love it. Thanks for sharing. So I want to, Joe, let's go to you. I want to hear a little bit about Autodesk. What are you looking at as primary indicators for success, and what keeps you up at night related to that?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll start off by saying a lot that has inspired me around, metrics and measurements is actually a book by John Doerr, Measure What Matters. So I really recommend to that. It brings a lot of good insights and lessons in that. In Autodesk, in any briefing program, there's always the hard question: what's the value of the briefing program? How is the company getting their money back? What is the ROI? And those are tough questions. So we try to bring at Autodesk answers back to that. One of the things we measure is total volume of briefings. And that means canceled including, because canceled still has an impact on your team, but also you can draw insights, why things are being canceled. We break it out. How are we impacting our accounts across the entire account structure? And we break it out by also virtual, hybrid, on-site, and off-site, because going forward, post-pandemic, we intend to continue doing those type of briefings, and we want to see that distribution for that. We look at total contract value as well as the annual contract value that we impact. Again, a briefing program doesn't own it. We don't make the sale happen, but we impact it and move it forward. And so we try to make those assertions as well. And net new opportunities is an important one. How did the opportunity from the briefing itself grow over time? But what new opportunities resulted as of the discussion in the briefing? And we also look at specifically how many executives in our customers are we impacting across all briefings. So that's where you start to get into that executive and customer engagement. Now, that's not all that we measure, but that's kind of a sum of what we're looking at.
Got it. That's great, Joe. Thanks for sharing that. Something I'm just curious about is the mechanics. If you can, I know this is a little bit technical here, but as far as identifying that impact, like for instance, new opportunities created, is that a manual process for you, where you have a cadence of looking back to past opportunities that briefings or events were requested based on? Or is there some way that your system gets updated automatically if a deal closes that was associated with the briefing? How does that work?
Appreciate the question, Marshall. At one point, it would have been emailing a lot of people and trying to correlate that information. Over the last year and a half at Autodesk, we moved away from disparate systems into a system that's fully integrated within our CRM. So everything is live and connected. So we automatically see the growth and the value of the deal that was at hand for a briefing, although we don't require an opportunity for every briefing. Some may be just about a relationship. And then through working with the sales reps, post briefing surveys and such, we're looking at, did an opportunity open within, 30 or 60 days or such post a briefing that you can attribute back to the briefing itself. And then we tag that opportunity to the briefing record.
Got it. That's super helpful. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you sharing that. So I want to, before I move to you, Stacy, and hear what you're doing with the Verizon program, I want to quickly launch another poll. Let's see here. So I'm curious about actual tools that your programs out there are using to, the way this is worded, we're saying track, but I would say to capture, to help analyze and track the whole kind of continuum of looking at these KPIs and visualizing them, recording this. What are you using out there? I'm curious about everything that's relevant or not. So, Stacy, while our audience is looking into this, you have a very robust operation there in terms of the Verizon program. Tell us a little bit about what you are focusing on. Your kind of primary KPIs and what matters most as far as knowing you're being successful in your mission.
Yeah, we track the traditional KPIs that I think, every program does, number of briefings, types of customers in their briefings, space utilization beyond briefings, new opportunities that are created post-briefing. We also track revenue and opportunities post-briefing in a 6-month time frame to see the difference between, as the opportunities and or the contracts and revenue grow post a briefing. We also do a comparison of customers who attend briefings and customers who don't. So we look at the overall revenue of all of the customer base and compare that growth number to the growth number of those that attended briefings. So, there's so much out there that you can look at and track across the board. We're partnering with our sales operations team to dive really deeper into the true tracking of a customer on their journey. Again, because we have a variety of other programs that our customers participate in, we can look at them on their journey of participation through the different types of events, even down to hospitality. And how do the customers that attend a webinar or a trade show or a hospitality event differ from those who don't interact with us? And how does then those activities plus the briefing program help to grow the relationship with that customer, as well as the opportunities and the revenue? So, there's so much you can track and attribute. And as Joe had said at the beginning, it is really important to be able to show that ROI of the program. I mean, you have to be able to use these details to be able to go back and show what did the program do. I mean, we don't ever take credit. Again, same thing. We don't take credit. We're just part of that journey.
Just part of the journey. I think that's a little humble. I know that your growth speaks to the impact that you're actually having. And so for many in the audience out there, they're kind of wondering about, this sounds totally, beyond my capabilities. How could I possibly get the track on all this data and be able to derive, actionable insights from it? Talk to us a little bit about the structure of the team, maybe outside of your traditional briefing management teams. Like, where are you getting help from the business to help you actually get usable insights from all this information?
That's me.
That's you, Stacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure. So what's important for us is not only, the feedback loop goes 2 ways, in our opinion. So we are taking the feedback that we get in briefings and feeding it back out to product marketing, to sales, to, the other, events and customer programs teams, to be able to influence the content that they use in those programs, and how do we improve overall products and product marketing. But the other piece of it is, we need them then to support and help us. So we've got the sales operations team. We have our, our larger customer feedback team that tracks NPS for, Verizon overall. They support the briefing program. We've got the sales teams themselves that support, our needs. We sit in marketing, but we've been very lucky to actually leverage those sales relationships several times to be able to not only fund new headcount for our program, but fund new EBCs for our program. So, using your relationships back out to be able to show that success and say, hey, here's what we're doing for you. Now come help us. So it's really that 2-way street is very important.
Stacy, I think what you do well, and what you were just talking about, you're really built and demonstrated how to build an ecosystem around your program.
Yeah.
There's no way we'll ever get the headcount in our program to do all those things.
Right. Well, but the thing is, you don't have to have the headcount in your program. You use all of the other resources to help you. So all those other groups within your companies, they'll, if you can if you can use their data to show success, then they're successful too, because then they've got ROI on what they're doing, bringing that data to the forefront.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would have to chime in and say Stacy's absolutely right in that strategy, because before we were just manually tracking like everything, and it was really overwhelming until we got sales ops involved, right? And the Salesforce gurus or whatever, and so they built dashboards for us, and we didn't have to do anything. Now we can actually prove value outside of just number of foot traffic that comes through, right? We can now have revenue impact that we're showing, and like Stacey said earlier, net new opportunities created. We now have visibility into that because we've partnered outside of our own team.
It's powerful for sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Anita. I think that building those alliances is so critical, not just in our industry, but across the enterprise and life in general, obviously. But being able to demonstrate that impact and then using that to leverage those relationships into greater capabilities, creating that ecosystem, like Joe says, I think it's such an important part of the evolution and growth of our programs. So in moving along here, I think just in summary, some things that really stood out to me in our prep conversations for this discussion, and just what I'm hearing in the industry. There's a lot of commonalities out there, but even for a program that has resources and capabilities like Stacy's operation at Verizon, it's so interesting to hear you call out utilization as a kind of top level. Don't miss it. Don't underappreciate the value of this. If people are coming through your program, that means there's an interest there. There's got to be a value that you're bringing to the table. And Joe, I think something that you brought up about the tracking the actual number of engagements, whether they are canceled or not, is really important. So you can actually track on your team's bandwidth that's being utilized for these. Sometimes it's not always a successful event that you actually get to pull off, but being able to demonstrate the time that's been put into that, I think is a really important thing that you bring up. Obviously, business impact, we talk about this all the time. It's really one of my favorite parts about the industry, the role that we have in closing deals, increasing the size of deals, increasing velocity of business, is what makes these conversations really kind of intoxicating as far as what we're doing in the engagement program. But finally, just as a very simple indicator, this idea of executive engagement, so tracking the roles and personas of the folks that are joining from the customer side and even from the internal side, this can help us, align parity as far as roles in the conversation. So our customers feel like we've prepared and we've got the right level of speaker associated with their conversation. And as well as just knowing that we're getting the right people to the table, true decision makers at the table when we need them to actually, sign the contract or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So just some interesting things that have stood out to me as far as KPIs. Thanks for sharing all that, team. So next, I want to move along this continuum to the actual event itself. So, we put a lot of preparation into these things, but as far as the day of or during the event, multi-day, whatever it might be, I want to hear a little bit about how you're capturing not just feedback and questionnaires and surveys, but insights from the conversation itself. Anita, I'm going to go back to you again to start here. Talk to me a little bit about how you're capturing that information and what's important about it to you, like what you're listening for, I guess I would ask, related to what's happening in the discussion day of event.
Yeah, I think I would say this is where we really rely on our speakers to lean in and help, right? We all use surveys to capture customer feedback, but that's not where we're getting insights. We're lucky to even get a response, as you know, by the poll, right? But the key insights really happen real time in the room, right? And it's something that we actually had to train our speakers to actively listen for and then follow up with them afterwards and ask them, what were the key takeaways? And we're also known as a resource for primary research, right? Like testing out new messaging and content, for instance, F5 is going through a transformation, and being able to see how our new narrative is landing is vital, right? And hearing directly from customers allow us to tweak us before we publish broadly. And then all the insights are then logged and then shared out with the rest of our stakeholders. But we can't do it all. And sometimes the discussions, you don't really know where it's going to go. So you really don't know what to ask for. But I think it's a matter of, if you have trained speakers engaging and listening for those key words, those key terms, or those active or things that you can actually engage with and act on, that's kind of what we're looking for, those aha moments, or what we call nuggets, right? If we can get those nuggets and share that out, then I think it's a success.
Awesome. I love it. Nuggets. We got to get all the nuggets, as many as possible. Love it. Okay, so Joe, you're muted, but talk to me about Autodesk and what you're looking for in the conversation, what you're listening for, and in tracking.
I think it's the same theme as what Anita was just mentioning. It's all the structured and unstructured data. You could get insights at the lunch table, with the customer at the, walking to the coffee machine. And how do we as a briefing program take that, synthesize that, and then just, share back with the company what's important, right? So it's really important. Some of the things we look at is NPS and customer sentiment pre and post the briefing, which is important. We had a briefing not too long ago where the sales rep said, the key stakeholder is 100% on board, and we got the pre-briefing survey, and it wasn't quite the case. So we were able to bring that insight and adjust, before the briefing ever occurred. So we think that's important as well. We look at the quotes that we capture from the sales reps after every briefing. We do a summary of every briefing, looking at those success stories. And we've really tried to position the briefing program in Autodesk. We report into marketing as well. But if you took what a briefing program does in all year and put it into one event, you essentially have an incredible event with people who are committed to listening to you for 6-8 hours or so. And these are decision makers. What's the value back to the company of that? So we've positioned the briefing program at really being at the vanguard of helping to amplify the brand and the customer voice.
I love it. Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, if you really could somehow quantify the value of the talent in the room and the time that you have with them to get meaningful feedback on what you're doing at the top brand level, I think is such a powerful thing. So thanks for bringing that up. Stacey, I know you have a lot to share here as far as quality, quantifiable insights that you're getting from the briefing. This is really what makes the difference between, just a fancy meeting and a true briefing that is impacting the bottom line. Talk to us about what you're listening for and how you're capturing those insights and data points throughout the conversation.
Yeah. So, we do a post survey. We do not do a pre-survey, but we do a post survey. And then, the account teams are responsible for really capturing the insights and the feedback during a briefing. But we have a really great, post briefing feedback from the sales team to our team. So we do get their feedback. But in that survey, our favorite thing across the board in all that we do is don't ask a question that you can't act upon. So if we're capturing that feedback one way or the other, internal, external, we need to act upon it. So, we look at those responses, we get them back to the account teams, to the product team, to the marketing team, to, whoever might need to act upon it. But additionally, we share it back again with our internal feedback team for NPS, because that information that we capture is beneficial to them as well in their larger NPS program. So, the feedback itself plays a vital role across the board. We definitely use the feedback we get in the EBCs to be able to influence our topics and things that we talk about at our customer advisory boards. So, an advisory board is, just what it says, to be able to gain, advice and feedback back from those key folks that you have aligned to. And, if we're hearing from an array of customers, improvements that they need in a product or something that isn't working for them in a product, we bring that back to the advisory board to get their feedback and insights on how to make those adjustments and how to grow. So again, it's that information feeds a variety of other teams that can use it, but most importantly, it is impactful, insightful information that we act upon.
Certainly. So powerful. And I mean, like we said, that those insights that we're getting from stakeholders that are briefing attendees is really the most valuable you could possibly ask for. Talk to me, panel, about let's go down a level into at the program level as opposed to the enterprise level, about how you're capturing feedback or insights that help you evolve the program itself, whether that's the content that you present or your speakers and how you orient, presentation style to those customer events. Are you looking for surveys or feedback responses on presenters or topics at all? Anita, are you doing something like this?
All of it. But I think what keeps us current and fresh is, we have a standard catalog that, account teams can from, and those are the topics. But we also have something called a specialized or other, right? And so we keep an eye on that category because that tells us if there's a spike in interest. We need to go out and develop content for that or recruit speakers for that because we know it's going to be a hot topic. And then we look at topics that aren't being used and reevaluate, is that stale? Because the last thing we want to do is keep throwing out old, outdated catalog to our account teams. They're like, this is ridiculous. So we look at, the popularity of topics and focus on that and highlight those. And then do a really evaluate the new fresh topics that we haven't even heard of. We haven't even started thinking about until a customer brought it up and said, this is what we really want to talk about. And we go out and actually, start enlisting people to help create the content for us. So yes, to your answer, we measure speaker evaluations, but most and foremost, we want to make sure all of our content is fresh and exciting to customers and account teams.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I just flashed a poll up on screen related to, data points that you're tracking related to your speaker bureau. This is a question I've been getting a lot from across the space. Curious what matters to you or what you're attempting to capture, at least as far as your record, your roster of speakers, and we'll have to get into how you take action on that in another session, but it's very curious to hear about this. So just moving along here, some things that have stood out to me from our prep sessions. Stacy, I think this, if we could leave with one thing from this whole hour that we're spending together, I think this idea of not asking questions that we can't act upon is probably the key takeaway from this conversation. So thank you for hitting that again. I don't think we can say that enough. So ignore the noise and focus on what matters. And that, I think, is NPS is tried and true. It's a marketing best practice. And like we've said, we have the best audience possible to give us, meaningful responses to that question. Quotes and testimonials. Joe, you spoke about this a little bit, and I think that this is incredibly valuable. It's not necessarily a metric that we can measure and quantify, but it's really what's going to matter to many of our audiences, such as executive stakeholders, sales teams that are our customers. Getting those quotes that landed the biggest deal of my career after our briefing event. Something like that speaks volumes that numbers about influence on pipeline never could. And when it's coming from a peer, that I think really resonates with those teams that you're sharing with. And finally, Anita, you've mentioned about, and Joe, you had a great point about being the vanguard of the brand and that messaging. So using that, your forum that you're offering to experiment with new concepts, new messaging styles and techniques, and using your team of talented presenters and subject matter experts to feel out those new concepts and see what's landing with your client base and what's not, before you even bring it to the rest of the market. I think that's such a powerful thing that you're doing across your programs. So thanks for sharing that. I'll in transition here, I'm going to end this poll and share those results. It's an interesting, cool. All right, so I've got a big topic here as far as our next one, in terms of actual reporting. So we've dug into what we actually, what we care about, how we're measuring it, and how we're getting those insights from the business. Now I want to talk about how we actually share that, how we curate that information into a compelling story that's going to drive the results that we're actually looking for. So I want to start with Joe here. Joe, tell me a little bit about reporting and analysis of all the insights and data that you're capturing through your conversations. How are you doing this, and what do you care? What are your primary concerns as far as reporting out to leadership and stakeholders across business?
Sure. And if I could just share a quote before I do that, because Stacy, I think it maps back to your philosophy about if you're measuring it, put it into action. There's a quote, I've heard it different ways, but one is knowledge is power, but without knowledge without action is useless. Right. So I think that's powerful. If we're collecting it, collect the right things, but then as you said, Stacy, put action behind that. So thanks for raising that. I view the briefing program has three primary functions: strengthen relationships, progress opportunities, and bring insights back to the business. In keeping in mind, Marshall, we don't own the data. I was once in an awkward position with a CFO where I had to defend a spreadsheet that I cobbled together, right? Never
We've
again.
all been there.
I don't want to be there again. So now that we're integrated into the CRM system, if the data is wrong, unless we put a report together wrong, it's a sales hygiene issue, but then we can help to impact and bring that insight back, and clean up our CRM system, which is good. I think we have a unique ability to capture customer sentiment, while, the speakers and the sales reps are usually watching who's speaking. We're watching the customer. We're watching their body language, seeing what's resonating, what's not resonating. And those are some valuable and important insights as well. And then, informing the sales teams and our account-based marketing teams about the insights that are captured. And again, that may seem simple, but it goes back to the earlier comment about, how does the briefing program help progress the customer journey, right? And we want to play an important role, in doing that.
And I know that you do. That's great. Thanks for sharing. I love that quote. We gotta capture that for sure. So Stacy, let me turn to you next here. As far as reporting out, I know this is probably a task. You've got so many different business units and types of stakeholders, but what are you really focusing on as a primary in terms of reporting out and analyzing data that you're capturing within the briefing program and in your events?
Yeah, we do a wide range of reporting out, from weekly reporting to quarterly reporting to we do quarterly calls with all the leaders. I don't think I mentioned earlier, the briefing program sets the targets for the sales teams every year. So we have a quarterly meeting with the sales leaders to, align against where they are on their target. It's part of their, their yearly agreements that they're going to hit those targets. So they're very anxious on that. And we literally report it weekly in a weekly report that goes out that compares every salesperson, sales leader to each other. They're very competitive. They like to see it.
Yes, they are.
So, we do that type of reporting out. We have a variety of masters. I mean, the sales teams want to know that the briefings, that their sales teams are using the briefing program and they're getting their customers in. Marketing, because that's where we sit, wants to see what the effectiveness is. What is the ROI? Where's the influence? That part of it. So, you're reporting to different masters of, on the information that each one of them needs. I think, and we talked about this, our program is fairly big. So we have a lot of data and a lot of things to report on, and a lot of folks don't have that. But find the key pieces that your leaders and your partners want to know about and just report on those. Don't feel like you have to bring everything to the table every single time. Bring what's important to the person that you're meeting with, and just make sure, that it resonates with that person. So, from metrics that tell us, how much revenue a customer made that went through the briefing program to, literally that salesperson did 42 briefings this year. It can range.
So maybe
know your audience.
Yes.
Stacy, if I could just ask you a quick question on that. There was a question earlier in the chat about someone, they're just starting their journey in building a briefing program, and they listen to you or some of us and they said, I can't do all that. I'm just starting. What would your advice be to them?
My advice would be, find out what is critical to your stakeholders. Build a stakeholder team, build your own internal advisory board of stakeholders that are going to use your program, so that you know what the needs are, and then you're able to report back out that you're meeting those needs. So, don't try to find data that may or may not support you if those folks don't think that's what they need to hear. So it's really using your stakeholders in the best way possible and building your own little advisory board that's going to help support you and what you need.
Anita, tell us about what you're thinking here.
I shouldn't have to follow Stacy because she says everything right. And it's funny because Stacy, you and I have like the same brain, kind of the exact same thing. And the thing that I think about, and the analogy that I use whenever I talk about data, is my Lego analogy, right? Only once, think of data as pieces of Legos, right? You may want to show your box of Legos and how many pieces you have in each color and size and line them up really pretty. But what people are really interested in is what you do and what you build with those pieces, right? Like a car or a city, that's what's interesting. And what should be relevant to your audience, right? And so, like Stacy, I think about what's relevant to my stakeholders and what can I build from all that data. I have a dashboard view in the appendix that everyone sees, but my summary slide will be the key takeaways relevant to each of the stakeholders. Again, like they say, marketing leadership, for us, is mostly around content and messaging, right? For sales, it's proof points and wins. For our executive leadership, it's peer insights. What are their peers saying? What are the industry trends, right? And we all, work with them ahead of time on what they want to see coming out of our program, right? So, there's still a lot of Lego pieces left over and on the floor you're stepping on, but you can always, continue to add, build if you need to. But she's absolutely right. Find out what's interesting to that stakeholder and show them the value that we're providing for them.
Joe, thank you, Anita. That's really awesome, actionable advice there. Much appreciated. Joe, you brought up some points about capturing some softer things from participants, both internal and external. Talk to me a little bit about how those are kind of guiding your decisions for the future, how they're helping you identify priorities or maybe areas for improvement within the program that you're capturing and tracking on from your conversations.
Well, thanks. And I like Anita's example because Legos are fun to play with. So,
Yes.
but don't walk barefoot on them. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Henry for, sharing some of the things they track in the chat. I appreciate that. That's part of what.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is for an ABPM is how we share and learn from each other. I'll start off answering your question by, before we decide to report on anything, as a team, we write down in a sentence, what's the story you want to tell, and what business value are you communicating? And we put placeholders, percent of this, X of that, Y of that. And then we go back and we ask, are we capturing those things in order to be able to tell that story, to any one of our stakeholders? And sometimes we aren't, and we have to go and we have to adjust and we have to capture different things. But what we're looking for, as you said, it's the softer things. We may think that we're doing great as a program, but capturing those insights from our SMEs, from the executives that participate, we're interested in what's the experience for the people who do the food and beverage or catering, in the context to a briefing. I was in a briefing not long ago, or in a meeting. The catering person was doing an amazing job, but at the same time, what they were doing was disruptive to the briefing. So looking at the experience from the moment you engage with the customer to, they come in, to the walk, to every little element. So we're looking at how do we elevate the overall experience, and you need to capture those insights along the way to help improve and elevate the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? And Stacy, you made a pretty compelling point about leveraging, some of this insight and analysis that you're gathering and tracking and reporting on to really propel the evolution of your program. Can you just talk to me a little bit about, how being vigilant about capturing these insights and data points relevant to your program, how that's kind of fueled your growth over time? If you were to give some simple actionable advice to some of these smaller programs like Joe brought up, what's something that's been particularly successful for you in your time with the Verizon program?
Well, I think really, as we've all talked about here, we track a lot of data, we track a lot of information. And, using that data from, utilization, number of briefings, comparison of revenue, those types of things, we've been able to use those numbers to boil it down for briefing managers to be able to say, if we get one more briefing manager, this is what they'll be able to execute on. And that's kind of how we have used that data to be able to show back to leadership, not only marketing leadership, but sales leadership, that, if you want to grow, this is what we need. So using that data in that way, and the same for our centers themselves. We have, I feel like, created this relationship with sales where we are a part of their process. We are a part of their, they need it, they want it, and
it's a requirement.
Yes, it is a requirement, but they see the value. And because they see the value, we're then able to leverage that to get what we need. We're in the process right now. Our London briefing center, they're shutting down the building itself. They're shutting it down, so we have to relocate to our new building, which it was on our long-term roadmap. But now, the company has made the decision to close that center earlier. So we're using our data and leveraging back with sales and with real estate to say, we have to have this, and you're going to have to pay for it because it wasn't in our plan this year. So you're going to have to pay for it. So that's what we're looking at right now of getting real estate to actually pay to move. And we've never had real estate pay for one of our briefing centers. We have paid for them as a business unit. So
Yeah.
again, it's using that data and, negotiating back, to say it's a value add to the business and it's needed.
Absolutely. So it's this kind of progression of being able to demonstrate the value first. You've got to get some activity underneath your belt to get started. But once you can prove that value add to leaders, stakeholders within your organization and get them enrolled and being your promoters and advocates, then they can take that to the business. And once you've got that proof in your back pocket, it's an undeniable kind of a case that you're making there, right? Like if you want more wins, we've got to get more resources and just making it super clear. And I think that each of you have done a fantastic job kind of outlining this idea of tailoring your pitch. I love this as a sales guy, as far as knowing who you're talking to and ignoring the stuff that doesn't matter to that stakeholder, no matter what their role is, and really focusing on a story that's going to be compelling to them so they can walk away with why I care about the briefing program, why I care about Joe and Anita's operation over there and on the top floor, right? So just really giving thought to who your personas are and tailoring a unique story to each of those. Joe, if you had something to add, I'd love to hear it.
I guess just three things. It kind of encapsulates a lot of this discussion, but first we say be a student of your company and have data-driven discussions.
Amen.
So to Stacy's point, when I'm saying I need X headcount to do X briefings, they say why. And we built a utilization methodology in Excel. So we can say the output of X is Y. And then we say there's this many sales reps in this company. And if X% does, certain briefings, well, we need this many people. So you start to have that data-driven discussion, which I think is incredibly important. So
important. And I think that's a great kind of wrap up summary of a lot of what we talked about today, Joe. Thanks for kind of playing us out there. In our last moments here, I just want to give a huge thank you to our panel today. All of you are individuals that I admire so much. Whenever you're talking, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it's an honor to share an hour with you and be able to pick your brain a little bit. I know our audience finds this incredibly powerful in terms of what you shared today. Looking ahead, it's hard to believe, but we're coming up on the end of the year and we're getting pumped for 2022. Our hope is to bring UPLEVEL back into the real world. We've had some great in-person events back before we were stopped from having those. So we're looking to do some regional events. We want to be in your neighborhood next year. More to come on that, but because we're a glutton for punishment, I think we're looking at the Boston region for a Q1 event, just because we love the cold, and we'll also be hosting these virtual forums as well on a quarterly basis. So a lot more to come. And UPLEVEL family community, thanks so much for being here. Let's keep your eyes out for recording and analysis and notes on the conversation today. Thank you so much for the support, and panel, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a great one.